Hi, thank you for joining us this morning. I'm Chrissie Murnin, and my guest in the studio is Gabriela Cadena. She is the Executive Director of the Southside First Economic Development Council. So we're going to talk about economic development on San Antonio's South Side. Tell me your story. Where did you come from, and how did you wind up as the Executive Director of Southside First?
Well, thank you, Chrissie. I moved here pretty recently, considering that San Antonio is so old, more than 300 years old. So I'm a relative newcomer. But I love the city, the different layers. It's one of the best cities. It's very underrated. I grew up in Brownsville. I went to school in New York. I moved to Washington, D.C. afterwards. And I decided to move back to Texas because my parents are still in Texas. But now I'm a big city girl. I can no longer live in a small town, especially one far away from a big city. So I decided to make San Antonio my home. And when I moved here, I didn't know anybody or anything. So I went through a 1-year program to become a San Antonio tour guide to understand all the different layers of the development, the history, how it is what it is now.
That's a great way to learn a city. How do you learn a city as someone new who didn't live here? Because how long does it take to learn and understand how the city operates and runs in the various neighborhoods and people?
And you're right, because getting to, be in a new city is more than just like, where's my new dry cleaner? Where can I find a mechanic that I can trust? Where can I go, buy groceries or buy this or buy that? Like, for example, I'm used to eating cabrito, which is, goat. And here it's kind of rare. Even café de olla, which I love, is kind of rare. So those are the kind of important things. And the reason I keep bringing food things up is because I'm a foodie. Uh-huh. So I'm so happy that San Antonio is one of the only U.S. cities that is also a city of creative gastronomy as a UNESCO designation. I think it still is the only U.S. city with 2 UNESCO designations, the missions and the creative gastronomy. So, I did my homework because I'm a learner. And so, but yeah, it does take a long time. And I found that, again, because I'm a learner, to look at it like from an academic and also experiential way. I went to everywhere. I went to Fort Sam, I went to the zoo, I went to the Whitty Museum. I've been all over to understand it.
So you just took advantage of everything San Antonio has to offer to learn it. And then now, how about your business background?
Yes. Well, when I was in Washington, D.C., I worked with the government. I worked with the National Institutes of Health as a contractor. And then when I moved here, I worked in financial services. And then I decided, I want to do something differently because there's a strong part of me of wanting to help people. I love entrepreneurs. My father was an entrepreneur. He still is, but, he's now retired. And so I looked at what are the available bodies to do this, and I got a job at the Southside First. And then within a month, the executive director left, so I became the interim executive director. And a few months later, I was made permanent executive director. But I love my job because I have so many wonderful partners to work with. Like UTSA, they have different arms. And one of the ones that I work most closely with is with the Small Business Development Council. I also work with their cybersecurity students with a project called Project Xander. And what we do is we help small businesses and not-for-profits strengthen their cybersecurity. Because normally, because they're smaller entities, they don't have as much protection and they're easy pickings. And a small business, if it's hit with a ransomware incident or something like that, they usually can come back from it.
Oh, I imagine it paralyzes them and then devastates them and destroys them.
And there are some quick, easy things that they can do to try to prevent that because it's increased. All of that is always increasing. And so we work with the Small Business Administration, Lift Fund, Launch SA. So I'm very lucky that I have a lot of great partners. And, especially in the South Side where, already they talk about San Antonio being a small city. It's even more so, I think, in the South Side because it's one of the older parts of town, where generations of people have been there. So that means we have a very high percentage of people who are homeowners because, they inherit their family home.
So there's a lot of strong connections.
Yes, a lot of strong connections. And so that really helps us because as we, get to know everyone. It really is very striking. I know they talk about 6 degrees of separation. I think San Antonio is maybe 2, and in the Southside is maybe 1.
Oh, really? Okay. Well, and so you being new to San Antonio, relatively new to San Antonio, you've been here 4 years
Yes.
now. When you come into a city and throughout the United States, there's areas of town that are more prosperous and then areas of town that have more poverty, and there's disparity. So what did you discover about San Antonio?
One of the first things that was very striking to me is that there's so many different school systems. 17. That just blew my mind. And so even compared to Austin, Austin really only has one. That already is striking. But then you understand why it was the case,
Why? I mean, explain that for those of us who don't know, who just know there are a bunch of school districts.
Mm-hmm. And I think it's part of it is, control of who gets the money and how do you allocate it to different parts of town, with redlining. But I don't know. I mean, I guess it works in some respects, because it's hyper-local. All the different regulations or the practices they have can be very hyper-local. Even like in the Southside, we have so many SAISD, yes. SAISD is right next to Harlandale, right next to Southside, Southwest, all of those, and they're all growing very quickly. So I applaud all people who work in anything education related.
Oh, because it is tough these days. But that's something you notice, that there's a bunch of school districts. And what else did you notice about San Antonio, good and bad?
Well, I noticed, like you said, why is it that more of the money that had been put into with the infrastructure is in the north? Because in the south, you'll see it. There's not as many sidewalks. They tend to have more flooding problems. And so right now, I know they're trying to address it, but it's very hard to, within like one election cycle of a mayor or a city council person, write something that has been decades in making. Right. So I know that's something that is very clearly addressed. I'm so happy that the city has different ways that you can express your opinion as to how the money can be allocated with SA Speaks Up. And, as far as I know, we deal with districts 3, 4, and 5, and they are always very willing to meet with their constituents and listen to, what they say.
And don't you think, or have you observed that the mayor and city council equity is very important to them?
Yes, it is. And I love that anybody can come in to watch their meetings and, speak if necessary. So that is an interesting, different form of government with the city council and the mayor versus like other cities. I know it presents challenges because, you have a lot of people who are always being elected. So how do you keep an initiative going? But, I think they're doing overall a good job.
I was telling you before we started today, my husband is from the southeast side, grew up near Highlands High School, and his mother always felt that the north side had everything. And so is there that feeling? Is there a south side, north side thing, or is that changing?
Oh, that's definitely changing because, for example, we have the South Park Mall, compared to the North Star Mall. And we're going to get an Evo that's going to have multiple bowling lanes and everything. And so that really is going to surpass the Evos in the north. But you have to look at the holistic view. And I know people, I think here are, some of them can be like, oh, I'm not going to drive within more than 10 miles of my home or 5 miles of my home. But now it's less likely that they have to do that because before you could only find Dunkin' Donuts in the north of the city. And now, they're going to open some in the south side, as well as a Cheddar's, as well as, some of these chain restaurants, And that's, again, good because we were just talking about the traffic pattern since you're a traffic reporter. And so.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
And we not only want to help chains to, develop, but we want to also help all the mom and pops, and even if there's another business in another part of town, if they want to open a different locale, the South Side is one of the places they can because let's call it the land of milk and honey where there's more land, size-wise, we're huge. Anything south of 90, we go all the way to the county line, and if you wanted to start something, that's a place where it's less likely that you'll be stopped by money. Because if you have to put in more money for a rent, then that leaves less money for everything else, And as an entrepreneur, you have to budget enough startup costs that you can go, And normally they said like 6 months, but, we've experienced some different shocks that we hadn't historically, like the pandemic, like the supply chain issues, like the labor shortages, So you have to be even stronger and more resilient. And that's one of the things that we've been focusing on, giving programs and information around strengthening people like that.
Oh, because yes, it has. Anybody who's made it through the last 2 years, I mean, hats off to them, because it has been so challenging these last couple of years. And that would be most of your time in San Antonio. You were watching, and then, here you are, take this job, and a month later the director leaves. Now you're the interim director. And our guest this morning is Gabriela Cadena. She is the executive director of Southside First Economic Development Council. What is the mission of Southside First, and what's your mission?
Well, we want to help, again, in economic development, and we do it a lot through the focus of business, because that's a lifeline of the community. But we also do things like we share free information with the city. We work very closely with them. If they have different programs, we help spread the word. So one of the departments that we work with, apart from economic development, is the mission area, which is the World Heritage Office. And there's a lot happening right there. I mean, because UNESCO means that you are like a treasure for humanity. And so they're looking at, what does that character look like? When you enter the missions, do you know that you're in the mission area? So I know that office is looking very closely at that. But we also want people, when they come to the missions, not just visit the missions and leave. Come, shop, eat, because there's really that's a lot of the flavor of it. The people who were in the missions are still there. Their descendants are still there. So, we want to make sure everyone feels comfortable, doing that. So I know that's something that we're focusing on a lot. But for example, we just had a TikTok class on Friday, because that's one way that small businesses can get their story out about who they are. Like, why should you come and buy my tacos versus somebody else's tacos? Well, I want to tell you about my family recipe with pineapples and al pastor, and what makes mine different, and that's one way to increase your reach, through storytelling. But we have to look at, the inequity of technology, right? Like, there's not as many people have internet, at home, but more people have phones. But people need to still use all the different technology forums within it, like TikTok. That's why we put on that talk. And we were so happy that Joe Angel from Chancla Academy volunteered to give that talk, so he did it for free, because he's like, I want to get back. I didn't have this information, this level of information when I was growing up, when I was in high school, and I want to provide it for free. So that's what I'm saying, is we're so lucky, that we have this. We had it at Piece by Piece, which is like Love and Peace by a Piece of the Puzzle, a vet-owned business on South Flores. And they, again, let us use the space for free, So that is how we're able to bring most of our events and information for free.
It's people helping people.
Yes.
Business people helping the community.
Yes.
Because everything is changing so quickly, especially with the technology and the way of reaching your customers or spreading information.
Yes, and you're right. I mean, when you're a business owner, you're not just a business owner. You're also my neighbor. You're also maybe my high school friend or my grade school friend, or we're both in the PTA together, or we have kids in the Girl Scouts or Boy Scouts. So you're right. It is the community, helping the community. And many times, I always want to make sure with the pandemic that shut things down a little bit, we have our events in person, because we want to make sure that people know each other. We're having a Conchas and Cafe event on December 2nd, and we're going to be doing a drive to give food to one of the neighborhood pantries. It's called Sunshine Pantry, and it's a mutual aid pantry, because sometimes some of us will come across harder times, and sometimes we just need a can of soup or whatever, and so we're very happy to do that. We just did a clothing drive for Texas A&M students, because when they need to go on an interview, they need to have a professional suit. But what if they don't have, something? So, we're so happy that we can participate in initiatives just like this to help the different parts of community.
Oh, that's neat. And so do people find out about your events on your website?
Yes, they can go to southsidefirst.org. They can also follow us across our social media, and it's usually Southside First in our TikTok, in our Instagram, in our Facebook, in our Twitter. we try to be wherever people are, because sometimes people are saying, I'm only on TikTok. So we have to be everywhere. Yeah, and we have a newsletter. People can sign up on our website, southsidefirst.org.
So you have to be on top of everything then.
Yes. But I'm so happy that I have a great staff. We really have a rock star crew. We had 2 interns from Palo Alto that are now our part-timers. Mm-hmm. One of them is a cybersecurity student, who helps us to continually help people. Mm-hmm. And so we have a mix. We even have a Spaniard on our team. Uh-huh. So we have bilingual people.
Well, you're bilingual, aren't you?
Yes.
I mean, you're more than bilingual, aren't you? What
Yes.
languages do you speak?
I speak Spanish because, growing up in the Valley, most people have a lot of exposure to Spanish. But then in college, I studied French and Portuguese, and I studied abroad in Denmark. And so I love languages because that's a way that you can connect with people. And again, the communication is so strong. Like in the past, I was very involved with Toastmasters. And so, that's why I love this job, because it's connecting people and helping their stories come out.
Mm-hmm. And you put yourself out there.
Yes, I'm an extrovert. Yes. But yes, I always say, especially one of the Palo Alto interns, her name is Elizabeth, she was a little bit shy. And I'm like, we have to sometimes just do things. We don't have a lot of time to prepare. Let's go live on TikTok now.
And she's like, oh.
But, this is what happens when you exercise your courage muscles. You do it little by little, and then you have a transfer of the courage muscles. So I'm not only, brave on TikTok, but I can also do that on Instagram. Or if I have an unexpected problem, I can figure out right away, because you're used to, let's do it on the fly more and more.
Uh-huh. Well, pivot, adjust. Those are the words of the last couple of years, because the circumstances of life has made that. We have to. Otherwise, we're left behind.
That's right. And I mean, life is requiring too much of us, because these, like I was telling you, these business owners are not just business owners, but many times there may be the son or the daughter who has to take care of their parents who are aging, plus they have their own kids, so that's what they have to do. And that's why we're trying to give them these tools to help them. So when you meet with a business advisor, like for UTSA, Small Business Development, or the Minority Development Agency, they will help you find shortcuts, because you could do all the research on your own, or you could just listen to them and say, what is a quick way? What is a tested way that you could, look at your accounting? Or you may think that the biggest problem you have is a labor shortage, but maybe what you really need to do is increase your margins, so they can help you look at it from an objective point of view.
So you're not on your own and trying to reinvent the wheel. They've got it already, and they can help you. But don't you? Do you think some people sometimes are too proud to ask for help?
And that's what we say. It's not about, I'm not smart. It's about, I have a lot that is being asked of me. Let me figure out who already does it. And we do this in other parts of our life. You were not so ashamed to ask someone, hey, I had a bad experience with my dry cleaner. Can you recommend someone? Or I need to find a new hairstylist. Why is it harder to say, hey, I need help figuring out TikTok, or figuring it out if I should even be on TikTok,
Right.
So I think it's that conversation and opening up that conversation.
Mm-hmm. And it's just asking for help. But I think, when someone's running a business, they're the big daddy or big mama, and they're supposed to have all the answers and know everything. That we expect that of them, and maybe they expect that of themselves.
I mean, maybe that's true, but I think the pandemic showed that, a lot of people don't have a blueprint for how to deal with all of life's uncertainties. And so now it's okay, well, I just have to figure it out, and the guidance could change, right? Because again, market forces are always changing. The state of what happens with the supply chain. I was just listening to a news story, and they were talking about what substitutions can you make if what you normally is more expensive? I mean, there's always choices.
Mm-hmm. So what are the challenges? The challenges facing businesses on the South Side, are they the same challenging businesses on the North Side? And in other parts of the country, has the pandemic done that to everybody?
Well, for example, in the South Side, you would have to look at, again, inequities in the internet, for example, and in also healthcare. And so what if you don't have health insurance and you haven't been taking care of your health, and then something like the pandemic comes and really thins out your family? I think it's truer, and they've shown it through the studies that it's truer on the South Side than in other parts of the country or the city. Mm-hmm. So that takes a toll, right? What if you were a dual income family and now you're a one single income family? Or you had your grandparents, to help you with raising the kids and now they're gone. Right. How do you substitute that? Because that labor still needs to happen. The kids still need to be looked after.
Right. And emotionally, you're dealing with loss, which is so hard, and everybody else is too.
Yes, but this is where the community comes through. And sometimes it's just letting people know, hey, this is what I need. Like, I can't find, like the baby formula. I love that there's so many Facebook groups, or even this, if you've heard about it, the Street News of SA Facebook group. That's one of the largest ones in North America. And it started because people were saying, where can I find toilet paper? And so, people are so willing to help like that in San Antonio.
Oh, that's great. That's good to hear. So when you look at, when you divide San Antonio by going across Highway 90 and you see the north side has just, is like almost totally built up. And when you look at the south side, there's a lot of development going on the south. And there's a lot of, the Toyota plant, huge. Texas A&M, what an awesome university and the growth there. So what is going on the south side as far as growth? What are you seeing?
Oh, you're right. Like in the A&M system, the Jaguars, the San Antonio campus is the fastest growing one. And right now, they're around it. They have this new development called Vida, and they just started a new park with in the Espada area. So, there's so much happening. But what we want is all of the South Side to rise, not just these parts that you called, the port. That's very
Port
strong.
San Antonio, absolutely. With Techport, yes. So, yes. So those things. But yes, you said you want all.
Yes, we want all ships to rise, because we need the whole community to be strong. It does us no good if we just have these a few shining lights, like 5 shining lights in such a big mass area. So that's one of the things we're trying to help. But you're right. A lot of it is growing. And it's an exciting time to be here. It's a great time, if you wanted to start a business. And a lot of people did with the pandemic, because, if they lost their jobs, they had to figure out a way to still feed themselves because those habits don't stop.
Right? Oh, absolutely. So at Southside First, if someone's starting a business, how do you help them? What do you offer them?
So we're in our space. We're located next to the South Park Mall on the second floor of the Chase Building. They can make an appointment and meet with one of the business advisors so that they can figure out, what do they need first. And usually one of the first things is a business plan. But that can be overwhelming. However, they can make it simple so they can say, okay, this is what we need to do. And then you can start seeing how much money do you need to start, so that you don't have to, so it can be a better going concern. And they can help you with a market study. Is the best thing for you to do a taco place, or is it better for you to offer Cuban food, for example, or looking in your recipes, your family recipes, can they do gorditas or can they do something else, They can help you in that way. And there's so many resources that they can do. One of the other programs we have is the Verizon Digital Ready program, and that's free. They can take these classes at their leisure. It's available 24/7. So when you have time, it's 5 a.m. That's when you have time. You can log on and do it periodically. When you take at least 2 of the classes, each of the classes is like maybe 60 minutes or less, and you can do it on different subjects. When you take 2 of those, then you can apply to get a grant, a $10,000 grant. They just closed one of the rounds, but I suspect they're going to open one next year. Mm-hmm. But that's still another good resource. You can talk to the mentors there. The city of San Antonio has a mentor program. So there's so many different resources. Like that's one thing that struck me immediately is how collaborative in general San Antonio is compared to other cities that I've been in.
They want you to succeed, and they offer all kinds of valuable information. So do you find that people like, I've got this great idea and I know it'll be a successful business, or they do their research and determine, well, this will work here? Because a lot of businesses fail, in the first 3 years?
Yes, and for different reasons. Sometimes they run out of money because, again, maybe they haven't planned, right? Like for already the known risks. Like, I need to have so much inventory on hand, But then you throw in curveballs, like the ones we just experienced. And this way, the advisor will be able to tell you, have you considered X, Y, or Z? So if you have to make adjustments in terms of your time, like how much you wait, like maybe you wait to start your business, in January as opposed to right now when there's a lot of competition. It could be a better strategy depending on what you're doing, So they could help you in looking at all those different ways. And many times they also fail because when you're a business owner, you don't only have one challenge. It's not only at the beginning, but it's continual. And so, when you have someone that you can turn to for help, that really helps. So I think right now a lot of things is that people don't know where to find help sometimes, and so they can come to us and we can connect them to it.
Mm-hmm. To be a member, do you have members of Southside First?
No, we don't have a paid membership. We're available to help all entrepreneurs.
So anybody can show up or contact you. How do people contact you?
Yes. You can go to our website, southsidefirst.org. Our contact information is there. You can put in a comment. Our phone number is 210-970-0936. You can send us an email at info@southsidefirst.org. You can come to our offices, 2130 Southwest Military Drive, Suite 202 in 78224, the same zip code as A&M.
All right. And what does the Southside need most as far as business development? What are you looking at and really targeting?
I think that we need it all. I think we need more of everything, like you said. I mean, there's a lot of people moving in. And so I think we need it all. I would say especially like healthcare providers. We need more CPAs, we need more lawyers, but we also need more taquerias. Mm-hmm. We also need more panaderias or bakeries like that do cupcakes or whatever, but we need like the whole spectrum of things. So whatever your talent is, I encourage you to explore it, and you make it a reality.
Mm-hmm. And then what are the concerns about growth on the South Side?
Well, one of the things that happens when you have more people moving in, that means that there's more cars and there's more traffic. And as we talked about the infrastructure. So what happens when there's a water main break? So now there's construction, because there are new buildings going up, but there's also infrastructure, that's happening. Then we have to become more nimble and know ways to get around it. That's just part of...
That's part of life in San Antonio because that's going on all over town.
Yes.
In all areas of town, you're challenged by construction, but what a good challenge, huh?
Yes, it's a good challenge because I think, a lot of this is for the best. San Antonio is really an amazing city, and I'm so glad that we have a lot of new people coming here, as well as, maybe family relocating from the north back to the south side because maybe they want to be close to grandma. And so they are also newcomers to the South Side.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and as I look at the map of San Antonio, and if you draw the line from Highway 90 across, and I watch traffic, but yes, there's increasing traffic on the South Side, but there still are some areas where there's a lot of land available. And over by the Toyota plant, you see farms becoming housing developments. And so you're witnessing a time of tremendous growth in San Antonio, and especially on the South Side.
Yes, but because you're right, it's interesting to me that like close to downtown, there's a Moore's Feed store. They just celebrated 75 years, and they sell agricultural products. And so even if you wanted to have backyard chickens or something like that, you can get it relatively close by. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of interesting right now. There's not a lot of cities where that happens.
Oh, because they're more urban than rural.
Yes.
And we still have that rural aspect. Because there is a lot of farming and people have their ranches.
Yes, and not far away. That's why like the rodeo season here is so big, because all of that is still very much strong going concern.
Part of as you said, the fabric of our community. Well, I want to thank you for coming to the station, joining us this morning. Our guest, Gabriela Cadena. She is the Executive Director of the Southside First Economic Development Council. I know you gave your website. If you want to give your website one more time, ways to for people to contact you.
Yes, our website is southsidefirst.org. And Southside First is how you can find us across all the social media. Like us on Facebook. We have a YouTube channel. All of our talks that we've had this year, we put on our YouTube channel because we recognize that not everyone can be everywhere. But if you wanted to learn about patents, if you wanted to learn about what the Federal Reserve says about the economy, for example, you can go to our YouTube channel. Our phone number is 210-970-0936. Our email is info@southsidefirst.org, or come and visit us.
And you mentioned cybersecurity and social media are some of the biggest things that you've worked on?
Yes. Yeah, we've had 3 events around cybersecurity, and we had an Instagram expert give us some tips on that. I mean, because there's so many platforms. But really, I mean, I'm so honored that we've been able to give so many resources. Now we just need everyone to implement them, because it's one thing to have it, it's another thing to implement them. But we can help you, and come make an appointment with one of the business advisors, or we'll figure out who is the advisor that you need to talk to. Do you need a social media mentor? We can maybe find you one of those.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Chrissie. Thank you for having me.